Hey, welcome back to another whiteboard chat. Today we are going to talk about the thyroid pathway or access or feedback loop or whatever you would like to call it. I've done a video in the past talking about reverse T3 thyroid hormone conversion, kind of dabbled in that, but I had a request to talk about a more complete overview of the entire thyroid access and feedback loop and some of the common issues that we are seeing that are causing hypothyroid, specifically hypothyroid. We're not really going to go into hyperthyroid on this one. Let's get into this. So first off, understand that we start with signaling from the hypothalamus, which is going to signal thyrotropin releasing hormone, or TRH. This will end up coming down to the pituitary, which is going to stimulate TSH production, which most of you know, thyroid stimulating hormone, very commonly measured on labs. And then this is going to basically tell our thyroid gland how much T4 we need to produce. Now, we do produce a very small amount of T3, but for the most part, most of our T3 or our active thyroid hormone, which would actually be free T3, but most of our T3 comes from conversion of T4 to T3. There are a few different ways that we can kind of get screwed up down in this process down here. So there are issues that could potentially cause low signaling. So a case like that, you would see low T3 and lower TSH, meaning low signaling and low thyroid, because generally with a lower amount of thyroid, we're going to get the signal back up to the top and it's going to say, hey, we need more TSH, you're going to produce more TSH. So you generally see a higher TSH with a lower thyroid hormone content, if you will. Let's talk about some of the problems, or at least let's talk about the steps and then some of the problems that we'll see in the kind of bottom portion of this process. We have some nutrients that are required. We have a few things that are also happening. So one, we have T4 converting into T3, and we also need free thyroid hormones, which are free T4, free T3. These are the actual hormones that we're more so concerned about because they're what's available to be used for these processes, right? For synthesis, we need iron, iodine, zinc, selenium. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with iodine, zinc, and selenium for this process, but iron's pretty important, especially in women more so. We do see a lot of iron deficiency, a little bit less common in men just because, generally like higher protein intake, consuming more animal products, and they just generally get more iron that way, at least from a dietary standpoint, right? So we need these nutrients for conversion, T4 to T3. A lot of this is happening in the liver. Gallbladder and liver kind of work together on a lot of things, so we added that. And then the gut, as you can see, if you can read this here, majority, 80% give or take, it's gonna vary, is happening in liver, okay? The rest in the gut, all right? Generally, a lot of people that have things like estrogen dominance or any type of hormonal issue and gut issues generally have a sluggish liver. So that's why we see these things kind of go hand in hand. The enzyme 5-deiodinase, I think that's how you say it, converts T4 to T3, okay? Now, we do have some required nutrients for conversion. These nutrients are selenium, zinc, B vitamins, glutathione, and magnesium. These are the primary nutrients that we need for this process. One of the things that's often overlooked is with our B vitamin deficiencies, which we see more commonly in women than men, although we do see it some in men as well. These people are also our undermethylators, right? They lack methyl donors in the diet. So we could have undermethylation being kind of like an indirect cause of hypothyroid, right? Not necessarily a direct cause, but definitely indirectly related, or these people would have both at the same time. It's very common to see hypothyroid matched with a gut and a hormone issue and an undermethylating person. Over here, we need to actually free up the hormones, right? It's important to keep in mind that a lot of our hormones have binding proteins, especially globulins, that are going to attach to them, and it's going to regulate the amount of free versus total hormones that we have. Now, in a healthy body, this perfectly normal process, the body's going to basically dictate this number based on what the body needs. It will control a pretty tight feedback loop. Don't have any problems. Now, in our case, looking at dysfunction, we see a lot of problems, right? Because there are a lot of potential reasons that these hormones might not be free or might not be freely available. So factors influencing, or perhaps nutrients: availability of free thyroid hormones, excess estrogen, very common in estrogen dominance because a lot of these people have high amounts of thyroid binding globulins, or TBG, okay? Stress. And then I'd also add gut issues to this for sure, because a lot of the TBG activity will be in that area. So those are going to be your biggest ones. Now, this raises the question of, well, what should we even check when we are doing labs? I generally prefer to check all of it. Have your TSH to see your signaling. Have your T4. Have your T3 so you can see conversion. Have your free hormones as well so you can see binding. And then in cases where you suspect high inflammation or autoimmune issues, check your antibodies, okay? TPO is commonly what people check. Check everything. Don't just assume. Very old school method is just check TSH, and if TSH is normal, then they're fine, which we know that's wrong for a few reasons, because signaling is not always indicative of total amount, and the TSH range is just too big, okay? So it may go up to something like 4.5 or something on a standard lab, whereas we really want it down probably more like below, 2 or below. Now, if we see a 2.5 or something like that in a person that has otherwise completely normal numbers, probably not that big of a deal because we're looking at the whole scope. But in general, that range is just way too big. Again, some of the things that can kind of get boogered up in this process, like we talked about, are people that have sluggish livers, okay? So we have conversion issues. Folks that have gut issues, again, causing conversion issues. Folks that have gut and liver issues with a lot of inflammation, they may produce, or they may have higher amounts of TBG. Estrogen dominance. Well, a lot of the people that have estrogen dominance also have gut issues. Okay, so again, it's all really connected. A lot of people that have estrogen dominance also normally have sluggish liver function, which is why we pretty much always support the liver. Nutrient deficiencies. Well, people that have really poor gut health or leaky gut or bad cases of SIBO, definitely a distinct possibility that their nutrient absorption isn't that great. So we may need additional nutrients, or they just don't take in these nutrients to begin with. You're going to see that in a lot of Gen Pop folks that are newer, right? Just straight up nutrient deficiencies. And it even happens in people that are more seasoned at tracking macros and eating on plans, because especially in women that have a lower total amount of calories, it's just easier to have a micronutrient deficiency because they just don't eat as much, right? There's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong there in terms of micronutrients. Don't just assume that just because you eat, whatever clean foods that you don't have a micronutrient deficiency. It happens. I like Chronometer app. That's a pretty good one you can plug into. And if you suspect any deficiencies, and you can look, it's not perfect, obviously, because, they're just estimates and like soils and things that plants grow and animals, and, it's all different. There's going to be some variances, but animals don't grow in soil, by the way. But yes, it's a good way to at least get like a rough idea. So again, let's recap. We start at the top. We signal from the hypothalamus, TRH, pituitary signals TSH. This tells the thyroid how much we need. It says, hey, we need this much T4, produce the T4, T4 converts to T3, and we ultimately want to end up with some unbound T3 or free T3 so we can use it. All of these things can potentially disrupt this process. Nutrient deficiencies, sluggish liver or gallbladder even, gut issues, estrogen dominance, really any hormone issue is generally going to be tied in. High inflammation, autoimmune issues, and stress, which, well, the person has the gut issues, the person that has, all these things probably also has stress. So it's not like, most of the time these things aren't really happening in isolation. So I hope that was a helpful overview for some of you that might be a little bit less familiar, especially with the free thyroid and the thyroid binding globulins and how that kind of works. Because that process, I generally don't hear as many people talk about that. Some do, but more people are focused on kind of like thyroid conversion, which is very important and one of the most common issues. But we miss the fact that a lot of these folks end up with high TBG and just don't have any free thyroid hormone anyhow. So we're screwed at the end of the process anyhow, right? And then ultimately, the person's body should signal back up to the top and keep that feedback loop in kind of a tight regulation. So hope that helps. Talk to you guys next time.